Good day, everyone. Um, in this particular video, I'll be discussing about the basics in C pointers, and I hope the end of this video I'll be able to discuss some important points when we are talking about pointers in C. Honestly, pointers is one of the hard topics in C, and personally I hate discussing pointers. Okay, I hate discussing pointers. But then since this is part of C programming language, so I'll have to do it. I'll discuss uh, as much as I want to, and I am hoping that you will learn something out from this video. Okay, so by the way, this is my YouTube channel, kuyaeggworld. For those who are not yet subscriber of my channel, please click subscribe, and in a way you can help me add some energy in creating videos like this. Okay, my video actually is it is educational in a way, because I did some videos about programming tutorials, and at the same time it is my personal expression, right? Because when I did travel, I did take some videos and upload to this YouTube channel. So this YouTube channel is actually my world. Okay, so uh, I am hoping that you'll share this video and help me increase my subscribers. Okay, so thank you. And here I would like to use this material over iq.com. I love the emphasis of this, and I'll be basing my discussion on this note. Okay, the title is Pointer Basics in C. Okay, and the author himself, he said pointers are slightly difficult to grasp at first. Okay, so that's I've said a while ago that I hate discussing pointers, but we'll try to do it step by step, and I am pretty sure that if you are so serious watching this video, you'll learn what is the basic of pointer in C. Okay, so by the way, what is pointer? What is a pointer? A pointer, right, is a variable. So I've been discussing a lot of videos about variables. We have integer variable, we have float variables, character variables, and a variable is capable of holding values. Okay, now what is a pointer? A pointer is a variable used to store memory address. All right. Now instead of storing values, all right, pointer variable will store address. Now take note that a particular variable is being or has its own address, memory address, and the function of pointer variable is to store that particular address of a particular variable, and this particular variable is holding a value. Okay, so if this is a value, this is being stored a variable, an ordinary variable, integer for example variable, and this variable is being represented by an address, and for you to store that particular address you need to have a pointer variable, right? So that's pointer. Okay, and here for example, right, this one, int marks, right, then semicolon, we are actually declaring marks as an ordinary variable, and at any part of the program, marks can store an integer value. But then again, that variable marks, all right, is being held by an address, and the address of mark can be stored to a pointer variable. All right, so that's it. Now we have this address operator, and the address of an operator is what? It's an ampersand. Okay, ampersand. Okay. Now, to find the address of a variable, if we want to know the address of marks, all right, C programming language provides us with an operator. And this is what? This is this ampersand. Okay? This is an address operator, and you can use this address operator to know what is the address of that particular variable. Okay? So this is to find out the address of a variable marks that we need to place an ampersand operator in front of it. Okay, like here. So by placing this one, will gives us the right to know the address of a variable marks. Now take note that marks is an integer variable. All right, and by using an address operator, which is being placed at the first, right, prior to m of marks, will give us the right to access the address of marks. Okay, so we have here an example, a sample program. We will try to run this program, and do some explanation on this. Okay, this is the program. We have this one int I, and we stored 12 to I variable, right? And on the next line, okay, we are actually trying to display address of I, right? Address of I is equal to %u. By the way, %u is a data placeholder, right? And as far as my know-how is concerned, %u caters on unsigned integer. Okay, unsigned, because when we are talking of address, we are not allowed to use negative. We don't have any negation here, so that is why we use %u, unsigned integer. And whatever is the address of I, alright, because for you to access the address of a particular variable, you have to place ampersand prior to the variable. Now, wait, sorry. And prior to this statement, we have here, so meaning variable I contains 12. And the next line, we are trying to print, alright, we are trying to print the address of I. Okay, we are trying to print the address of I. And then the next one is, the next line, the next printf is, we did print whatever is the value of I. Okay, and we are aware that the value of I is 12. The problem is, how is the address of I? Okay, that is why we have this ampersand I. Okay, this is an address operator. So when we are going to execute this program, okay, when we are going to execute it, by the way, this is actually the result. We have some errors. Actually, we can change this to P. %P, it's still the same. It stands for positive integer, because like I said, we are not allowed to have negative address here. So when we are going to click run button, we are now trying to display the address of I, right? The address of I is something like a word value. I hate to explain the technicalities of this one, but this one represents the address of I, and the value of I is equal to 12. Now, what makes us display this address? It's because of what? Address operator. And if we are going to change this to D, right, when we are going to execute the program, it will display an error, but still it displays the value, right? But C programmers suggested to, instead of using this thing, you can either use U or P. And every time you execute the program, the address of a particular value changes. So who did the assigning of the address? It's the C compiler. Okay, it's the hardware. I don't know, right? So we'll try to ask the author of C programming language, Dennis Rich. Okay, so again and again, for us to display and to know the address, we have to make use of an ampersand, an address operator. And the data placeholder must be %p or %u. Okay, so I hope I did explain it well. What is the purpose or what is the function of this address operator. Okay. Now let's move forward here. It's in here. We have here some examples. Okay, now there are some important points to address with when we are dealing with an ampersand or an address operator. Number one, an address operator cannot be used with constants. Okay, so when you say constants, I'll explain the examples in a while, or expressions. Okay, so we are not allowed to use address operator in dealing with constants and expressions. It can only be used with a variable. So a while ago we did use I as, right? It's a variable, and we tend to know the address of I by way of using address operator. Now here we have 3 examples. Address operator with bar, then semicolon, this is okay. When we are going to use printf, and by using %p as data placeholder, will give us the right to know the address of this var. But when we say address operator or &12, we are not allowed to have this. Why? 12 is a constant, right? We cannot use address operator in dealing with constants. Another example, ampersand or address operator then followed by open and close parenthesis x plus y. This is not again allowed. This is an error. Why? Because x plus y is an expression. So you cannot use address operator handling in dealing with expression. Okay, so take note, address operator can only be effective when we are going to use it with a variable. Alright, okay. Now here, how to declare pointer variables. Okay, now knowing that look at this, our topic is pointer basics in C. What is a pointer? Right? A pointer is actually a variable that is capable of storing address. And how would we know nga this particular variable contains this particular address? By using address operator or ampersand. Now, the question is how to declare a pointer variable. Okay? So that we can store address of a variable. Right? So here, how to declare? This is the syntax. Data type, we have 3, right? Char, float, and int or integer. And then followed by pointer name or a variable. Okay, a pointer variable it's a user-defined variable. You can supply for as long as you will follow the rules in variable namings. We have this naming convention. We have, like for example, when you are going to have this variable, it must start with an alphabet, right? And followed by any combinations of letters, numbers, and undersign. Other than that, it will not run. Okay, so this is a user-defined word, and then followed by an asterisk. Okay, this asterisk makes this variable a pointer variable, and with this, right, we can now start storing addresses to this particular variable. Okay, so I have here an example here. Int, this is a data type, then followed by asterisk, and IP is a user-defined, right? It's a variable, it's a pointer variable. And at any part of the program, when we are going to use IP, IP is capable of storing address. Right? So float, right, with this one, and if p is a variable and it's a pointer variable, it's a float pointer variable. Right? So take note of this. And now, knowing the declaration of a pointer variable, how to use it, right? How to use it, how to assign address, knowing that a pointer variable is capable of storing variable addresses. So here we have here an example, right? Int asterisk IP, this is a pointer variable, and I is an ordinary variable, it's still an integer, and we are trying to store 10. Right? Please follow my screen. And we have this float, right? Another pointer variable because of this asterisk operator, and we have also this p equal to 12.2. Now this is a float variable, that's why we are storing float value 12.2. Now look at the next two lines. This is crucial. Okay, please take note of this. IP, right? Now take note that IP is what? It's a pointer variable. IP is equal to ampersand I. No, we are all aware, and I did discuss this a while ago, that by using ampersand, this is an address operator, gives us the right to access the address of I. I contains 10, right? And I in the memory allocation of CPU represents a particular address. Whatever is the address of this I is now being stored to a pointer variable IP. Right? Now, next, ampersand F. Alright? This one. The address of this is being stored to FP. If P is what? It's a float pointer variable of F. Alright? So, that's it. So, when we see how is the value of IP, the value of IP is the address of I. And the value of FP is actually the address of F, the memory address of F. So this is how it works. This is how to make use of what? Pointer variable. Now, again and again, you have this ordinary variable, and we are trying to store 10. For example, this is I. This I contains 10. And the address of this I variable is being stored to a pointer variable. And in this particular example, our pointer variable is IP. And for us to store the address of this I, we have to use what? We have to use ampersand or address operator. And for us to declare a pointer variable, or to make that variable a pointer variable, we have to place asterisk prior to the pointer name or variable. Okay? So I hope all are clear. Okay, clear, because eventually we'll be dealing with programs, right? We'll be creating programs that is trying to utilize pointer variables and addresses. Okay, so that's it. I'm not going to discuss this anymore. I did discuss this a while ago. Let's go back to here. We can initialize the pointer variable at the time of declaration, but in this case, variable must be declared and initialized before the pointer. We'll try to look at the example here. Now, int I or I variable contains 10. Alright, and we have this, right? This is actually it's a pointer variable, IPTR, and it contains the address of I. Right? That's the explanation of this. Now we'll try to look at the example here. Okay, we'll try to look at this. Int marks. Marks is an ordinary variable that contains 100. Right? And P1 is a pointer variable, and it's an integer pointer variable. While P2 is another pointer variable. It's an integer pointer variable. Look at the next line. P1 is equal to the address of marks. Alright? Now, take note, marks contains 100. And the address of marks, right, as a variable, is being stored to P1. P1 is a pointer. And on the last line, we have this P2 is equal to P1. Meaning, we are trying to store the content of P1 to P2. P1 contains the address of marks. Alright? So, at this particular line of C programming language, P1 and P2 now contains the address of marks. Alright? So that's the interpretation of this line. So knowing that P1 and P2 are actually pointer variables, when we are going to imagine, alright, when we are going to imagine, P1 and P2 is now pointing to variable marks, because P1 and P2 contains the address of marks. Okay, so that's it. And here, another example. I'm not going to discuss this one, but by the way, this must be for example here, I'll just explain this. Int I is equal to 100. So I is an ordinary variable and it contains 100. The next one is actually a pointer variable, IPTR, because of this asterisk, and it's an integer pointer variable. The next line says IPTR, which is actually a pointer, equal null. Now, in this particular example, our pointer variable, which is IPTR, is now printing nothing. So according to C programmers, we have to be careful of pointing to nothing, right? You are trying to use a pointer variable and it points to none, then it will produce a weird result, right? Not like here, our pointer variable P1 and P2 are pointing to marks, right? So this one is an example of a pointer variable which is pointing at nothing, and this must not be used in any programming C programming activity. Okay, so here another type, dereferencing pointer variable. What is this? Dereferencing a pointer variable simply means accessing data at the address stored in the pointer. Alright? Okay, here. Well, what does this mean? You have this variable I, and variable I contains 10, for example. And you have this IPTR, a pointer variable that contains the address of I. Dereferencing pointer variable means using this pointer variable, how can you print the content of this, which is actually 10, right? That's dereferencing pointer variable, right? Again and again, you have this simple variable I and it contains 10, right? And you have this pointer variable which is actually pointing to I because it contains the address of I. The question is, if you are going to use this pointer variable to display the content of I, how is that so? That's dereferencing pointer variable. Okay, so look at this. Int I, right, contains 100, and we have this IP. It's a pointer variable which is actually pointing to the address of I. Okay, right? Now here, when you are going to use this principle, dereferencing pointer variable, what is this? When you say printf, right, %d as your data placeholder, and you are going to use asterisk IP. IP is a pointer variable which is actually pointing to I, right? Which is actually containing the address of I. To display the content of I, which is 100, you can use asterisk IP, right? You can place asterisk prior to the pointer variable, and good as you are displaying the content of I, which is actually 100. Same way as saying printf %d then variable I, because I contains 100. Okay, this is the so-called dereferencing pointer variable. When your I contains 100 and your pointer variable IPT or IP is pointing to your I because it contains the address, for you to print the content of I variable, which is 100, by using this one, you can add asterisk, printf %d asterisk IP, and you can print 100. Okay. So that's it, and I think I'm going to stop my discussion in here, and we will try to continue discussing on the next topic of pointers by on my next video. Okay, so I hope I was able to explain the topic well, and if you have some questions, please do some comments on this video, and I will be a lot happier to entertain your questions, and will try to create another video to address your concern. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something important today. God bless you. Goodbye for now. God is good.